Break this down. No better person to talk to than Judo Bank Chief Economic Advisor, our old mate Warren Hogan. Warren, I mean, Labor doesn't really have a great track record of investing these sorts of funds. I mentioned the VEDC. What do you make of what Jim Chalmers has announced?
Yeah, hi Steve. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, it's not just the Labor Party. Governments generally don't, and particularly when the decisions are made behind closed doors, which many of these so-called industry policy decisions are. So, look, I'm a bit concerned about the precedent it sets and the direction. It looks reasonably harmless. That is, this investment mandate defined as what they've got to return. That's 4 to 5 over CPI, plus these areas of national priority, some of which they're already investing in. But where does that go next? So it isn't a great sort of trajectory. That is government directing resources in our economy, where we've had 40 years where we know that that is not the way to do it, that the private sector is best placed to know where to direct resources.
If there are things to invest in, projects, whether they be big infrastructure or, as Chalmers mentioned, housing, and you've got a guaranteed 4 to 5% return, wouldn't private enterprise be doing that investing?
Well, they most likely would, although there are some examples where that may not be the case. And of course, the Future Fund has said that they will still have the primary judgment around investing as the risk-adjusted return. But, you know, that's a bit ambiguous too. So, look, I think the issue here is, what is the Future Fund for, and is it to be used as a way to direct resources to the government of the day's long-term desires? And that seems to be where we're going. And I don't think it is what it was set up for at all. And that's the contradiction. But more generally speaking, we don't want governments with industry policy making decisions on investments in the cabinet room. You know, I think there is a role for industry policy, but it's got to be transparent, it's got to be clear objectives, and the private sector's got to be involved in the governance of it. And that is not what we're seeing from this government. We're seeing the cabinet leading the way and decisions being made out of the blue.
And of course, now we have, I mean, I'm sure he's doing a good job, but we've got in charge of this, Greg Combet, former boss of the ACTU, obviously a Labor politician. I mean, can we trust that board that now runs the Future Fund to run it the way it's been run? I mean, would your assessment, Warren, be turning 60 billion into 280 billion over, what is it, 20 years, is not a bad result?
It's an exceptional result, and part of it is because the Future Fund has been able to go and hire some of the best people in the investment business. And you see it in the returns, you see it in the way they talk about what they're doing. And it's all part of a culture that's been put together in the Future Fund over this period of over 10 years of excellence. And of course, that's the thing that's at risk here, is if you do have a fundamental change in the way the board interferes with the management and the staff of the Future Fund, then that can undermine not only the good culture and the good decisions that come with it, but it could see the loss of good quality people. And the Future Fund has been attracting some of the best in the world to come and work for them.
Let's have a listen to Jim Chalmers. He's defended this idea today. Have a listen.
There will always be people who pretend that the economy is exactly as it was in 2006, or that the opportunities and challenges in our economy aren't evolving. It's not especially unusual in the international context for governments to communicate their economic priorities and ask that sovereign wealth funds factor that into their decision making.
Warren, it sets up an interesting argument, doesn't it, in the election campaign, whenever that might be, March or May, because the opposition's already said, we're not going to change it. We're going to leave it as it is. It's a bit rich, is it not, of Chalmers to make the argument that, oh, well, all the opposition are doing is wanting to stay how it was and it'll always be that way. But you know, you and I have said they've done a pretty good job. So why fix something that's not busted?
Yeah, well, I think that's a very good point, because the Future Fund has done a great job, as we talked about. But it actually is this broader issue of industry policy and about the deployment of government resources to support ostensibly the private sector and the building out of priorities, whether it's around energy or other important industry, food and grocery. There's a whole range of different critical industries we can talk about. But the issue is the governance structures around it and how you do it. And, you need to have this directed, not by Cabinet, not by the Treasurer or the PM's office, but by an independent, transparent process, a board made up of private sector bureaucrats, the lot. And that's the issue at stake here. And I think that's the issue that needs to be debated. I think we need to do industry policy. We need to be modest, but we need to be transparent. And unfortunately, what we're seeing with the Future Made in Australia and this decision on the Future Fund, I don't think it's transparent.